5 things you must remember when life feels hard. Buddhist wisdom. There are moments in life when everything feels heavy, when each breath seems to carry the weight of unanswered questions, invisible wounds, and unfulfilled expectations. In such times, even the simplest tasks feel monumental, and hope appears as a faint light somewhere beyond reach. It is in these moments that the teachings of the Buddha can serve not as lofty philosophy, but as a living guide for the heart. A reminder that pain is not a punishment, but a path to awakening. Buddhism does not deny suffering. It recognizes it as an inevitable part of existence. The very first of the 4 noble truths, dukkha, tells us that suffering is inherent in life. Yet, it also tells us that suffering can be understood, transcended, and transformed. The Buddha did not teach escape. He taught transformation through awareness. When life feels unbearable, when confusion clouds the mind and despair grips the soul, the Buddhist path invites us to pause, breathe, and see clearly. It reminds us that the storm outside cannot destroy the peace within unless we abandon it ourselves. These are not mere words for comfort. They are ancient truths, tested through the lives of countless seekers before us. In this journey, we will explore 5 essential truths, 5 things to remember when life feels impossibly hard. They are not quick fixes. They are deep insights that require reflection and practice. Each one reveals how hardship, when met with awareness and compassion, can become the very soil in which wisdom grows. Let us begin this journey into Buddhist wisdom, not to escape the pain of life, but to understand it so deeply that it loses its power to control us. Everything is impermanent, even your pain. In the depths of suffering, one of the most profound teachings the Buddha offered becomes both a challenge and a comfort. Anicca, the truth of impermanence. Everything in this world, every emotion, every experience, every attachment is in constant flux. The clouds that seem endless today will scatter tomorrow. The pain that feels eternal will fade. And even joy, as radiant as it may seem, will eventually pass. When we suffer, our mind convinces us that the pain will last forever. We identify with it, saying, "This is who I am now." But impermanence tells a different story. It reminds us that nothing in existence has the power to stay fixed. Every moment is already dissolving into the next. This is not a reason for despair, but a reason for deep hope, because if nothing lasts, then neither does our suffering. To truly understand impermanence is to understand freedom. The Buddha once said that all conditioned things are like a dewdrop on a blade of grass, beautiful, fleeting, and fragile. The more we cling, the more we suffer. But when we begin to see everything, joy and pain alike, as temporary visitors, we no longer fight the flow of life. We begin to move with it. Think of your pain as a storm passing through the sky. You are not the storm. You are the sky itself, vast, still, and unbroken. The storm may rage, but it cannot stain the sky. It will pass, as all things do. This shift in perspective changes everything. When we accept that impermanence governs all, we begin to release the illusion of control. We stop demanding that life be something other than what it is. In doing so, we discover peace, not because life stops being painful, but because we stop resisting its nature. Impermanence teaches compassion as well. When we realize that our loved ones, our joys, and even our own bodies are impermanent, we begin to love more deeply, forgive more easily, and let go more gracefully. Pain becomes a teacher, reminding us of what truly matters and urging us to live fully in the fleeting present. So when life feels unbearable, whisper to yourself, "This too shall pass," not as a cliché, but as a sacred truth of existence. The mountain of pain you face is not eternal. It is a passing form in the endless river of life. If you can see this, not with your intellect but with your whole being, you will begin to find peace in the very heart of suffering. Because what hurts now will soon transform into something else. What breaks today will one day open space for new understanding. When life feels hard, remember impermanence. And remember that every breath you take is a small resurrection, a quiet proof that change is always happening. Even now, even here, healing has already begun. If this message touched you, remember to subscribe to the channel, so that wisdom continues to reach you when you need it most. Suffering is a teacher, not a punishment. When life grows heavy and the days seem carved out of sorrow, it is natural to wonder why such things happen. Why must we endure heartbreak, illness, loss, or failure? Why does peace seem so far away when we crave it most? Buddhism does not offer the false comfort that life can be entirely free of suffering. Instead, it reveals a higher truth, that suffering itself is the path. The Buddha called this dukkha, not to condemn existence, but to illuminate it. He saw suffering as the first doorway to awakening, the sacred mirror in which we see our attachments, illusions, and fears reflected with painful clarity. The ordinary mind resists suffering. It fights it, denies it, or tries to numb it with distractions. Yet in doing so, it misses the wisdom hidden beneath. Suffering, when met with awareness, becomes a great teacher, perhaps the greatest of all. It strips away the superficial layers of our identity, the false images we project, and brings us face to face with what is real. It is through our deepest wounds that we begin to ask deeper questions. Who am I, really? What truly matters? What cannot be taken from me, even in pain? These questions mark the beginning of awakening. Buddha himself walked through the fire of suffering before enlightenment. He saw sickness, old age, and death, and realized that no one, no matter how powerful or privileged, could escape these truths. Instead of turning away, he turned toward them. He sat beneath the Bodhi tree not to escape suffering, but to understand it completely. When he arose, he carried not only peace but compassion for all beings who were still bound by their pain. His enlightenment was not the absence of sorrow. It was the profound understanding of its nature. When we suffer, we stand at a similar threshold. Pain calls us inward, away from the noise of the world, into the silence of our own being. There, if we dare to look, we see the roots of our suffering, craving, aversion, and ignorance. We crave what is pleasant and flee from what is unpleasant. We cling to permanence in a world that is constantly changing. We believe that happiness depends on getting what we want, and that unhappiness is punishment for losing it. But this is illusion. The Buddha taught that freedom arises when we stop seeking to control life and begin to understand it as it is. The greatest transformation happens not when suffering ends, but when our relationship with it changes. Imagine holding a hot coal. At first, we clutch it tightly, crying out in pain, wondering why it burns us. But as we awaken, we begin to see that it is our grip that causes the suffering. When we open the hand and let go, the pain begins to dissolve. The coal does not disappear, life still contains difficulty, but our bondage to it ends. Awareness is that open hand. It allows us to see suffering clearly, without judgment or resistance. This does not mean we should glorify pain or seek it. Buddhism does not praise suffering for its own sake. It teaches us to recognize it as an inevitable part of existence and to use it as a means of awakening. When we resist pain, we give it power. When we observe it, we take that power back. A meditator sitting in silence might feel discomfort, restlessness, or fear, but through mindfulness, they begin to see these experiences arise and pass. Slowly, they learn that suffering, like every other phenomenon, is impermanent and impersonal. It is not my pain. It is simply the movement of life, the echo of past causes unfolding in the present. In daily life, suffering appears in many forms. Loss, rejection, loneliness, failure, uncertainty. Each one can be a teacher. The loss of something we love shows us the impermanence of all things and urges us to cherish the present. Rejection reveals the deep human need for approval and challenges us to find validation within. Loneliness exposes the illusion of separation and invites us to see the interconnectedness of all beings. Failure humbles us, dissolving the ego that clings to perfection. Uncertainty teaches us to trust the unfolding of life. Every difficulty carries within it a seed of awakening if we are willing to learn. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, "By oneself is evil done, by oneself is one defiled. By oneself is evil left undone, by oneself is one purified." Purity and impurity depend on oneself. No one can purify another. This means that liberation cannot be handed to us. It must arise from our own insight. Suffering presents the opportunity for that insight. When we face it consciously, we stop blaming others, stop running from life, and begin to take responsibility for our own inner state. We realize that peace is not the absence of hardship, but the presence of wisdom. Consider the lotus, that sacred symbol of Buddhism. It blooms in muddy waters, not in clean, still ponds. Its beauty arises precisely because of the mud. In the same way, our wisdom arises from the messiness of human experience, from tears, confusion, and failure. To reject suffering is to reject our own growth. The lotus does not curse the mud, it transforms it. That is the alchemy of awareness. When you stop asking, "Why me?" and begin to ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" you step onto the path of liberation. Sometimes the lesson is patience, learning to sit with what is unresolved. Sometimes it is compassion, understanding that everyone suffers, not just you. Sometimes it is humility, realizing that we are not in control of the universe. Every lesson brings us closer to the truth of our nature. Suffering strips away illusions until only awareness remains, vast and unshaken, and in that awareness, even pain becomes sacred. There is a story in the Buddhist tradition of Kisa Gotami, a young woman whose only child died suddenly. In her grief, she went to the Buddha, begging him to bring her child back. The Buddha told her to bring a handful of mustard seeds from a house that had never known death. She went from door to door, but every family had lost someone. Slowly, she realized that suffering was not hers alone. It was the condition of all humanity. Through her pain, she awakened to compassion. Her suffering did not vanish, but it became her path to understanding. She learned what all beings must eventually learn. We cannot escape pain, but we can awaken through it. This teaching is not easy. It requires courage, the courage to face our wounds without running, to feel deeply without drowning, to trust that there is meaning even when we cannot see it. The Buddha never promised a painless life. He promised a path to freedom from the grip of pain. That path begins with awareness and blossoms through acceptance. When we stop resisting, suffering softens. When we embrace it, it transforms. When we learn from it, it becomes our greatest teacher. The world will not always be kind. People will leave, things will break, plans will fail. But each moment of pain is an invitation to remember who you truly are. Not the body, not the roles you play, not the stories you tell yourself, but the timeless awareness behind them all. The more you identify with that awareness, the less power suffering holds. You become like the ocean. The waves of emotion may rise and fall, but the depth remains undisturbed. In meditation, this truth becomes alive. When you observe a painful emotion, anger, fear, grief, without labeling it or pushing it away, you begin to see it for what it is, a temporary movement of energy. It arises, peaks, and fades. The moment you stop saying, "This is my pain," it begins to lose its grip. Awareness, not avoidance, is the medicine. To sit in silence with suffering is to give it space to dissolve naturally. The heart, like a wound, heals when exposed to air and light. Suffering can also awaken compassion. When you suffer deeply, you begin to see the suffering of others with new eyes. You realize that every person you meet is fighting a battle you cannot see. This understanding softens the heart. Instead of judging, you begin to wish others peace. The boundary between you and them starts to blur. The Buddha called this karuna, compassion, the natural flowering of an awakened heart. Through suffering, we learn to love without conditions. There is a profound paradox in all of this. The more we open to our suffering, the less we suffer. Pain resisted multiplies. Pain accepted dissolves. When life hurts, most of us close off, harden, or run away. But the spiritual path asks the opposite, to open wider, to feel fully, to surrender the need to fix everything. In that surrender, peace dawns. Not the peace of avoidance, but the peace of truth. We learn that we are not broken, we are being refined. So when life feels unbearable, do not curse your suffering. Sit with it. Listen to it. Let it teach you. Ask, what illusion is this pain trying to dissolve? Perhaps it is teaching you to let go of control. Perhaps it is showing you where you have been unkind to yourself. Perhaps it is guiding you to deeper empathy for others. Every hardship carries within it a hidden message from the universe, a message written not in words but in experience. Your task is to read it with awareness. Remember, the Buddha's awakening did not erase the world's suffering. It revealed the way through it. The same potential lies in you. Each difficulty you face is part of the path to awakening. Each tear you shed waters the seed of wisdom. When you begin to see suffering not as punishment but as teacher, your relationship with life transforms. Pain loses its power to define you. You no longer ask for a smooth road, you ask for a wise heart. In time, you will realize that every trial was preparing you for something deeper, for compassion, for resilience, for understanding. You will look back and see that the darkest moments were the ones that shaped your soul the most. The fire that burned you also forged you. The wounds that humbled you also opened your heart. The losses that shattered you also set you free. So when life feels hard, remember, suffering is not the enemy. It is the master that leads you to truth. It is the sacred fire through which ignorance is burned away. It is the teacher that reveals what no book, no sermon, no philosophy ever could, the direct experience of impermanence, interconnection, and awakening. The Buddha once said, as rain breaks through an ill-thatched house, passion will break through an unreflecting mind. But when mindfulness guards the heart, even the storm of suffering cannot harm it. Build your refuge in awareness. Sit beneath your own Bodhi tree. Let suffering speak. Let it dissolve, and let wisdom rise in its place. You are not what you have lost. You are not what you endure. You are the awareness that sees it all and remains untouched. That is your true nature, timeless, compassionate, and free. If these words bring peace to your heart, take a moment to subscribe to the channel so this wisdom continues to walk with you through every storm. Letting go is the path to peace. There comes a moment in every human life when the burden becomes too heavy to bear, when the hands gripping everything begin to tremble under the weight of it all. We hold on to so much: people, possessions, identities, expectations, dreams, and wounds, as if our worth depended on keeping everything from falling apart. But the truth, as the Buddha revealed, is that the more tightly we cling, the more we suffer. Freedom does not come from holding on. It comes from letting go. Letting go is not weakness. It is the highest form of strength. It is the art of trusting life so completely that you no longer demand it to conform to your will. Letting go does not mean becoming indifferent or careless. It does not mean suppressing love or emotion. On the contrary, it allows us to love more deeply because we are no longer loving out of fear of loss. It means loosening our grip on what was never ours to control, the flow of events, the behavior of others, the outcome of our efforts. The Buddha taught that attachment, upadana, is the root of suffering. When we cling to things as if they were permanent, we inevitably suffer when they change, as they always do. The moment we try to hold the river still, we lose the beauty of its movement. Every attachment begins with desire. We desire pleasure, comfort, security, validation. There is nothing inherently wrong with desire. It is part of being human. But when desire hardens into craving, when we believe we cannot be happy without a certain thing or person, we create our own prison. The walls of that prison are made of musts and shoulds. Life must go this way. People should behave that way. I must not lose this. The moment reality disagrees, we resist, and resistance breeds pain. Letting go is the gentle act of opening the hand. It is the recognition that clinging only tightens the knot of suffering. Imagine holding a rope in a tug of war. The harder you pull, the more it burns your skin. But if you drop the rope, the pain ends instantly. The rope is your attachment. The burn is your suffering. The act of letting go feels frightening at first because it feels like losing control. But in truth, it is the beginning of real control, not over the world, but over your own heart. The Buddha illustrated this in the story of the monkey and the jar. A hunter places sweet fruit inside a jar with a narrow opening. The monkey reaches in, grabs the fruit, and becomes trapped because it refuses to let go. The monkey could be free in an instant if only it released its grip. But blinded by craving, it holds on until it is captured. So it is with us. The fruit represents the things we cannot release. Resentment, regret, pride, fear, desires for recognition or control. Our suffering is not caused by life itself, but by our refusal to open the hand. Letting go requires awareness. You cannot release what you do not see. Often, we are unaware of how much we are clinging to an idea of who we should be, to the need for others' approval, to the story of how life was supposed to unfold. Mindfulness shines light on these attachments. In meditation, we begin to see how thoughts arise, how emotions surge, how the mind grasps for security. As we watch without judgment, something begins to soften. The mind realizes that it can let go and still exist. It learns that peace comes not from getting what it wants, but from releasing the need to want. One of the hardest things to let go of is the past. The mind clings to memories, both sweet and painful, replaying them endlessly as if they could be changed. But the past is a phantom, an echo of moments that no longer exist. Each time you dwell on what was, you miss what is. The Buddha compared this to carrying a heavy bag long after the journey has ended. Every thought of resentment or guilt is like another stone in the bag. To put it down is to feel lighter instantly. Forgiveness, both of others and of yourself, is the ultimate act of letting go. It is not saying what happened was right. It is saying, I will no longer allow this pain to define me. The same is true for the future. Anxiety is attachment projected forward in time. It is the mind trying to control what has not yet happened. It imagines 1,000 possible outcomes and suffers from each one before they even occur. Letting go of the future means trusting the unfolding of life. It means understanding that you can prepare, but you cannot predict. It means meeting each moment as it comes, without carrying the weight of what might be. The Buddha taught that all fear arises from trying to hold on to what cannot be held, the illusion of permanence in a world of change. Letting go is also about identity. We cling to the idea of I, me, mine. We defend it fiercely, though it is only a collection of memories, roles, and opinions. The Buddha called this illusion anatta, non-self. He saw that the self we cling to is not a fixed entity but a fluid process. Thoughts come and go, emotions rise and fall, the body changes with every breath. There is no solid I to protect. When we see this directly, even for a moment, a great burden falls away. We stop taking everything personally. We stop being offended by life. We realize that things simply happen, and our peace does not depend on labeling them as mine or yours. This insight brings deep humility and compassion. If there is no separate self, then others are not truly separate either. The suffering of another becomes our own. Their joy becomes our joy. Letting go of self-centeredness opens the heart to boundless love. It is no longer my happiness or your pain, but simply the flow of life expressing itself through different forms. In this understanding, the need to possess, compete, or control dissolves naturally. Letting go also means releasing expectations of how life should unfold, how others should act, and how quickly we should grow. Expectations are invisible chains. They bind us to disappointment because reality will always deviate from our script. The Buddha advised living with upekkha, or equanimity, a calm acceptance of whatever arises. When we live without demanding constant pleasure or certainty, we discover a steady joy that no circumstance can touch. It is the peace of an untroubled heart. One of the greatest illusions we must let go of is the belief that peace depends on external conditions. We think, when I get that job, when I find that person, when I fix this problem, then I'll be happy. But each time we achieve one thing, the mind invents another condition. The Buddha said that this endless striving is like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. True peace is not something you reach someday. It is what remains when you stop grasping for more. Letting go does not happen overnight. It is a gradual process of unlearning, a gentle peeling away of the layers of attachment. Sometimes it hurts, because what we cling to feels like part of who we are. But with each release, we move closer to freedom. The first step is awareness. The second is trust. Trust that life knows what it is doing. Trust that everything you lose is making space for something deeper. Trust that even when you do not understand, the universe is unfolding with perfect timing. Trust is born from understanding karma, the law of cause and effect. What you experience now is the ripening of past causes, and your present actions plant the seeds for future results. There is no randomness, no punishment, only the unfolding of patterns. Knowing this brings peace. It allows you to stop resisting the present moment and instead meet it with acceptance. Acceptance is not resignation. It is the recognition that this moment, exactly as it is your teacher. Once you accept it, you are free to respond with wisdom instead of reaction. Meditation is a powerful practice of letting go. As you sit in silence, the mind will try to hold on to thoughts, plans, memories, and worries. Each time you notice and release them, you are training the art of surrender. You are learning that you can observe without controlling, participate without clinging. Slowly, the grip loosens. The breath deepens. The heart softens. You begin to trust the natural rhythm of existence. Letting go can also mean letting go of the need to be perfect. So much suffering arises from self-judgment, the endless inner voice that says you are not enough, not wise enough, not calm enough. The Buddha taught compassion not only for others, but for oneself. Self-compassion is the ability to see your own struggles without condemnation. When you forgive yourself, you allow growth to happen naturally. You no longer cling to guilt or shame. You learn from them and move forward lightly. Perhaps the most difficult letting go of all is letting go of control, the illusion that you can manage everything. Life, by its nature, is unpredictable. The more you try to control it, the more anxious you become. The Buddha suggested surrendering to the flow of dependent origination, the understanding that everything arises due to conditions. When you see this, you realize that you are not the separate author of your life, but a participant in an infinite web of causes and effects. You still act, but without attachment to results. You do your part and let the rest unfold. This is the essence of the middle way, neither clinging nor rejecting, neither passivity nor struggle. It is living with balance, meeting each moment with openness. When joy comes, you enjoy it fully but without grasping. When sorrow comes, you feel it completely but without resistance. In both, you remain free. This is the true meaning of letting go, to be fully alive yet unattached. Imagine standing by a riverbank, watching the water flow. Thoughts, feelings, and experiences drift by like leaves on the surface. Some are beautiful, some painful. The mind wants to reach out and grab them, to hold on to what pleases and push away what hurts. But when you simply watch, without grasping, you discover stillness. That stillness is your true nature, the unchanging awareness beneath all change. In time, you realize that letting go is not something you do. It is something that happens naturally when you stop clinging. Like a flower opening to the sun, the heart releases by itself when it no longer fears. And when that happens, life becomes light again. You still love, you still care. But without the chains of attachment, you can hold everything and let everything go in the same breath. The Buddha once said, "Just as a snake sheds its skin, we must shed our past over and over again." Letting go is that shedding. It is the constant renewal of the spirit. Every day offers a chance to release something, a resentment, an expectation, a fear. And in doing so, we move closer to peace. The less we carry, the freer we become. The freer we become, the more love flows through us. So when life feels hard, when you find yourself clinging to what no longer serves you, remember this. Peace is not found in holding on, but in opening up. Trust that what is meant for you will stay. Trust that what leaves was never yours to keep. Each ending clears the way for a new beginning. Each release is an act of faith in the wisdom of the universe. To let go is to return to your true nature, spacious, fluid, unbound. It is to rest in the awareness that has never been born and will never die. In that space there is no fear, no craving, no resistance. There is only peace. The peace that was always here, waiting beneath the noise of clinging. When you truly let go, even for a moment, you realize that you were never holding the world. It was holding you. Life itself carries you, breath by breath, moment by moment, through every rise and fall. Trust that flow. Let go into it. That is where peace lives. If these words help you see life with lighter eyes, remember to subscribe to the channel and continue walking this path of freedom and wisdom with us. Acceptance is the doorway to inner freedom. There is a quiet moment between resistance and surrender. That moment when the struggle stops and what remains is simply the truth of what is. That is acceptance. It is not resignation, nor passivity, nor the absence of desire. It is the simple, profound act of saying yes to the present moment, even when it does not align with our plans or preferences. In that yes lies liberation. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises not from pain itself, but from the mind's refusal to accept it. The Buddha called this the second arrow. The first arrow is life, the pain of loss, the inevitability of change, the unpredictability of existence. The second arrow is self-inflicted, the stories, judgments, and resistance we add on top of that pain. Acceptance disarms the second arrow. It ends the unnecessary suffering created by our refusal to face reality as it is. When we resist what is, we create a battle within ourselves. We fight against the weather, against people, against time, against our own emotions. we say, "This shouldn't be happening," and in doing so we reject life itself. But the truth is that life does not bend to our opinions. It unfolds according to causes and conditions beyond our control. The rain falls whether we approve or not. People come and go regardless of our attachment. Aging, loss, and change happen because that is their nature. Acceptance is not about liking these things. It is about recognizing their inevitability. It is the wisdom to see that resistance changes nothing, but peace changes everything. The Buddha often compared life to a river, always flowing, always changing. To resist reality is to stand in the current, trying to push the water back. Exhaustion is inevitable. Acceptance is stepping aside, allowing the water to flow, and realizing that it was never against you in the first place. Life does not conspire to harm you. It simply unfolds according to its nature. Pain comes not from the river, but from your struggle against it. When you accept the flow, you begin to float instead of drown. True acceptance begins with awareness. You cannot accept what you do not see clearly. Most of the time, we live lost in judgment, labeling every moment as good or bad, success or failure. Acceptance requires seeing beyond these labels. It asks, what if this moment, exactly as it is not wrong? The mind resists that question because it thrives on control. It wants certainty, comfort, and fairness. But life is not a negotiation. It is a mystery. Acceptance is the courage to live without needing every mystery to be solved. Acceptance is not a single act. It is a continual practice. It begins with the body, with sensations, with breath, with presence. When you sit in meditation, you may feel restlessness, discomfort, or boredom. The instinct is to shift, to escape, to fix. But if you stay, if you breathe into what is, something extraordinary happens. The discomfort changes. You realize it was not the sensation itself that caused suffering, but your refusal to feel it. The same is true in daily life. The moment you stop resisting pain, its intensity softens. What you accept transforms. What you fight persists. Buddhism speaks of dukkha, the suffering of unsatisfactoriness, the restlessness that pervades all existence. The root of this suffering is craving, the mind's endless desire for things to be different. Acceptance cuts through craving by teaching us to rest in the reality of this moment. When you no longer demand that life meet your expectations, peace arises naturally. It does not mean you stop taking action. It means your actions flow from clarity instead of desperation. You do what you can, and you let go of what you cannot control. One of the hardest lessons of acceptance is learning to embrace imperfection. We live in a culture that glorifies constant improvement, better bodies, better jobs, better relationships, better selves. We chase the illusion of completion, believing that once we arrive there, peace will follow. But peace does not wait at the end of perfection. It exists here and now, in the messy, incomplete, beautifully flawed present. Acceptance means looking at yourself, with all your fears, mistakes, and contradictions, and saying, "This too is me." Only when you stop rejecting parts of yourself can true transformation begin. The Buddha taught that enlightenment is not becoming something new, but realizing what you already are, pure awareness, unblemished by the chaos of experience. Acceptance also extends to others. Much of our suffering comes from trying to change people, from expecting them to act, speak, or love according to our needs. But others, like us, are bound by their conditioning. They act from their understanding, their wounds, their karma. To demand that they be different is to fight reality. Acceptance does not mean tolerating abuse or allowing harm. It means seeing others clearly, without illusions or resentment. It is responding to them from wisdom rather than reactivity. When you accept people as they are, without trying to possess or reform them, relationships become lighter. Love becomes pure, not a contract, but a gift freely given and freely released. In the same way, acceptance includes the acceptance of your own emotions. Many people imagine that spiritual growth means being free from anger, fear, or sadness. But the Buddha never taught suppression. He taught awareness. Emotions, like clouds, pass through the sky of consciousness. The problem arises when we identify with them. When we say, "I am angry," instead of "anger is arising." The first binds you, the second liberates you. Acceptance of emotion means allowing it to exist without judgment. It is saying, "This too belongs." When you stop labeling emotions as good or bad, they begin to lose their power over you. You start to see that emotions are not obstacles to peace. They are waves moving through the ocean of awareness. There is a profound story in the Buddhist tradition about the Buddha being insulted by a man filled with anger. Instead of reacting, the Buddha remained calm. The man, confused by his lack of response, asked why he did not get angry in return. The Buddha said, "If someone offers you a gift and you refuse to accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The man answered, "To the one who offered it." The Buddha smiled and said, "So it is with anger." This is the essence of acceptance, the refusal to pick up the poison that others hand you. You cannot control what comes your way, but you can choose not to let it enter your heart. Acceptance also involves the humility to face uncertainty. We spend much of our lives trying to control the future, to ensure safety and predictability. But the future is inherently unknowable. No amount of planning can change that. The Buddha encouraged his followers to live in the present, where life actually happens. Worrying about the future is like trying to walk across a bridge that has not yet been built. Acceptance of uncertainty is the foundation of peace. It teaches us to rest in trust. Trust that whatever comes, we will meet it with wisdom. Often, acceptance is born through loss. When something precious is taken away, a person, a dream, a stage of life, we are forced to confront impermanence. The initial reaction is grief, resistance, disbelief, but eventually a quiet surrender comes. We realize that holding on cannot bring back what has passed. In that surrender, there is a strange grace. Pain becomes teacher. Loss becomes doorway. We see that everything we love is borrowed, not owned. This realization, though painful, softens the heart. It makes us gentler, more grateful. Every moment becomes precious because we know it will not last. Acceptance does not mean you stop feeling pain. It means you stop adding to it. Imagine holding a heavy stone in your hand. You cannot make the stone lighter, but you can stop tightening your grip. That is acceptance. It is the release of mental tension around what cannot be changed. It transforms suffering into wisdom. You begin to see that peace is not the result of controlling life, but of aligning with it. When you accept what is, you become one with the flow of existence. The struggle ends and silence begins. This silence is not emptiness, it is fullness. It is the stillness of the ocean beneath the waves. Life continues, joys, sorrows, victories, losses, but you are no longer tossed about. You remain centered in the awareness that observes all things come and go. That awareness is your refuge. No external condition can touch it. Acceptance reveals that refuge. It shows you that even amidst chaos, there is a space within you untouched by time, circumstance, or emotion. The Buddha called this nibbana, the extinction of grasping, the end of resistance, the peace that surpasses understanding. Sometimes people fear acceptance because they think it means giving up on change. But true acceptance is the beginning of change. When you accept reality, you see it clearly. Only then can you act wisely. Resistance clouds perception. Acceptance brings clarity. It allows you to see what can be changed and what cannot. The Serenity Prayer echoes this Buddhist truth. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Acceptance is that wisdom. It is the foundation of both serenity and courage. Practicing acceptance in daily life means pausing before reacting. It means taking a breath and asking, can I be with this? Whether it's a difficult emotion, a delay, a disappointment, or an unexpected turn, can you allow it to exist without resistance? This question brings mindfulness into every moment. Slowly, you begin to notice that the mind's resistance is optional. Reality does not change when you argue with it, only your peace does. When you stop fighting what is, you discover a lightness that cannot be described, the quiet joy of being aligned with life. Acceptance also deepens gratitude. When you stop demanding that life be different, you start seeing what is already good. The simple things, breath, sunlight, the sound of rain, the presence of loved ones, become miracles. Gratitude and acceptance are inseparable. One cannot exist without the other. The grateful heart naturally accepts, and the accepting heart naturally feels grateful. Both arise from the same understanding that this moment, fleeting as it is sacred. The Buddha once said, "Peace comes from within, do not seek it without." Acceptance turns your gaze inward, away from external conditions and toward the inner state that creates your experience. The world will continue to change, politics, economies, relationships, weather, but your inner world can remain still. That stillness is cultivated each time you say yes to what is. It is reinforced each time you let go of the demand for things to be different. Eventually, acceptance becomes your natural response to life. Even in difficulty, you remain anchored in peace. It is important to remember that acceptance is not always easy. Some moments will break your heart, some losses will leave scars. Acceptance does not erase pain, it gives it space to heal. The wound must breathe before it closes. Acceptance is that breath. It says, yes, this hurts, and yet I can hold it. It transforms pain into compassion, first for yourself, then for all beings who suffer. Through acceptance, the heart expands until it embraces the entire world. When you practice acceptance long enough, something extraordinary happens. You realize there is nothing left to accept, because you and life are no longer two separate things. The distinction dissolves. There is only life happening effortlessly through you and as you. The one who resisted, the one who suffered, the one who demanded, all fade into the background. What remains is the silent witness, the still awareness untouched by any circumstance. That is freedom. Not the freedom to change everything, but the freedom to be at peace regardless of what changes. So when life feels hard, when everything seems to fall apart, remember that acceptance is the doorway to peace. Do not fight the storm. Become the sky that holds it. Let reality be as it is. Bow to the moment, even if it is not the one you wanted. Each act of acceptance dissolves another layer of illusion, bringing you closer to your true nature, spacious, open, and free. This is the gift of the Buddha's wisdom, not an escape from life, but an embrace of it in all its raw beauty. In the end, acceptance is love. Love for the present moment, love for yourself, love for life as it unfolds. To accept is to love without condition. And in that love, you find peace. If these reflections bring stillness to your heart, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and continue walking with us on this path of awareness, compassion, and inner freedom. Compassion transforms all suffering. There is a light that shines even in the darkest places of the human heart, a light that does not deny pain, but embraces it, that does not close itself in defense, but opens wider in understanding. That light is compassion. In Buddhism, compassion is not merely a feeling, it is the active expression of wisdom. The Buddha taught that suffering cannot be destroyed through anger, avoidance, or judgment, but only through compassion, a quality that arises when we see the shared fragility of all living beings. Compassion is not weakness, nor is it pity. It is the recognition that just as I suffer, so do you. Just as I long to be free from pain, so does every other being. It is this recognition, this awakening of the heart, that transforms suffering into connection and isolation into love. To understand compassion deeply, we must begin with our own pain. Often, people imagine compassion as something that must always be directed outward, toward others. But before you can truly care for others, you must learn to care for yourself. The Buddha said, "You, yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection." Self-compassion is not self-indulgence. It is the courage to face your own suffering with tenderness instead of judgment. When you make a mistake, when you fail, when you feel lost, instead of saying, "What's wrong with me?" you whisper, "It's okay, I'm human." That simple shift changes everything. The heart softens, the mind quiets, healing begins, suffering isolates. It tells us that we are alone in our pain, that no one could understand what we carry. But the moment we turn inward with compassion, we begin to see that pain is a universal experience. Everyone you meet, the stranger on the street, the friend beside you, even those who seem powerful or content, has known fear, loss, and longing. Compassion reveals this hidden truth of existence. Beneath our differences, we all share the same tender humanity. When you see this, you stop judging so harshly, because you understand that everyone is doing their best with the awareness they have. Compassion dissolves the illusion of separation. It reminds us that all suffering is shared. In Buddhist teachings, compassion, karuna, and wisdom, prajna, are like two wings of the same bird. One without the other cannot fly. Wisdom allows you to see clearly, to understand the impermanence, emptiness, and interdependence of all things. Compassion gives that understanding warmth and direction. Without wisdom, compassion can turn into helpless sentimentality. Without compassion, wisdom becomes cold and distant. Together they create balance, clarity with kindness, truth with tenderness. This balance is the heart of the middle way, where the awakened being moves through the world not as a detached observer, but as a luminous presence of care. Compassion does not arise by force. It grows naturally when we open ourselves to the reality of suffering. The Buddha's journey began with such an awakening. Before his enlightenment as Prince Siddhartha, he lived shielded from pain within the walls of luxury. One day he ventured outside and saw an old man, a sick man, and a corpse. These sights shattered his illusion of permanence and perfection. He realized that suffering is not an exception, it is the very condition of life. Instead of turning away, he turned toward it. That turning is compassion. It is the willingness to face the pain of the world without shutting down. From that moment of awakening came a lifetime devoted to alleviating suffering, not through denial, but through understanding. Compassion is not always easy. It asks us to feel deeply, to allow the suffering of others to touch us without being consumed by it. It requires courage to open the heart in a world that often rewards hardness. Yet paradoxically, the more we open, the stronger we become. The Buddha compared compassion to a lotus that blooms in muddy water. The mud of pain nourishes the flower of love. Without darkness, compassion cannot grow. When you meet suffering, yours or another's, with presence instead of resistance, you transform it into wisdom. The mud remains, but it no longer soils, it sustains. One of the great practices of cultivating compassion in Buddhism is metta bhavana, the meditation on loving kindness. It begins simply by sending goodwill to yourself. May I be happy? May I be safe? May I be free from suffering? These phrases are not empty affirmations. They are intentions that slowly rewire the heart. Then you extend the same wishes to others, to loved ones, to strangers, and even to those you consider difficult. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. Over time, the boundaries dissolve. You realize that wishing happiness for others does not take away from your own. It multiplies it. The heart becomes vast, able to hold the joys and sorrows of all beings without breaking. To live with compassion is to live with awareness that every action, every word, every thought has consequences. The Buddha's teaching on karma is deeply tied to compassion. When you act out of anger, greed, or ignorance, you sow seeds of suffering for yourself and for others. When you act out of kindness and understanding, you sow seeds of peace. Compassion thus becomes the foundation of ethical living. It is not about moral superiority, it is about alignment with reality. To harm another is to harm oneself, because there is no true separation. To love another is to heal oneself, because compassion is the natural expression of interconnectedness. There is a story of the Buddha encountering a cruel bandit named Angulimala, who had murdered many people. When the Buddha met him, he did not attack or condemn him. Instead, he looked at him with compassion and said, "I have stopped, Angulimala. You stop too." The bandit, bewildered, asked what he meant. The Buddha replied, "I have stopped causing harm to living beings. You are still running with violence and hatred. Stop that, and you too will find peace." Those words pierced the man's heart. He renounced his violence, became a monk, and attained enlightenment. Compassion, not condemnation, transformed him. This story illustrates the profound power of seeing beyond a person's actions into their suffering, to the ignorance that drives their harm. Compassion is not blind forgiveness. It is seeing the potential for awakening in every being. In our own lives, we encounter people who hurt us, disappoint us, or act from ignorance. The mind's instinct is to judge or retaliate, but Buddhism invites us to look deeper. Behind every harmful act is suffering, fear, confusion, insecurity. When we see that, anger softens into understanding. This does not mean condoning harm, it means responding wisely. You can set boundaries and still wish someone peace. You can say no without hatred. Compassion does not erase justice, it gives it a human face. It reminds us that healing the world begins not with punishment, but with understanding. The more we practice compassion, the more we discover that it is inseparable from forgiveness. Forgiveness is compassion applied to the past. It is the act of freeing yourself from the poison of resentment. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting another to die. The Buddha knew this truth well. Forgiveness is not about forgetting or excusing harm. It is about releasing the chains that bind your own heart. When you forgive, you are not saying the past was okay. You are saying, "I choose peace over pain." This inner release creates space for healing. Compassion allows the wound to breathe. Forgiveness allows it to close. Compassion also reveals itself in how we treat the smallest forms of life. The Buddha taught ahimsa, non-harming, as a natural expression of compassion. Every being, from the smallest insect to the largest animal, wants to live, to be free from suffering. When we recognize this shared desire, our relationship with the world changes. We tread more gently, we consume more mindfully, we speak more kindly. We live with the awareness that our existence is woven into the web of all life. Compassion becomes not just an emotion, but a way of being, a silent vow to lessen the suffering we touch. In the practice of compassion, there is also the challenge of balance. Too much identification with others' pain can lead to burnout. Too much detachment can lead to coldness. The key is equanimity, upekkha. It is the ability to hold suffering with tenderness, but without being overwhelmed. Just as a doctor treats patients with care, but does not fall ill with every disease, the compassionate heart learns to help without losing itself. This balance comes from remembering that suffering is part of the universal flow. You are not responsible for saving the world. You are responsible for keeping your heart open. The open heart naturally radiates healing wherever it goes. When compassion becomes your natural state, every encounter becomes sacred. You begin to listen more deeply, speak more gently, act more mindfully. You no longer need people to be perfect to deserve kindness. You understand that everyone is carrying something invisible. The person who lashes out in anger is suffering. The one who withdraws is afraid. The one who seems indifferent may be overwhelmed. Compassion allows you to see beyond behavior to the human being beneath. This seeing changes everything. It softens your judgments, quiets your pride, and expands your capacity for love. Compassion is also the bridge between inner peace and outer action. Buddhism does not ask us to retreat permanently from the world, but to engage with it from a place of awareness. The Buddha himself spent his life teaching, healing, and guiding others. Compassion moves us to serve, to alleviate hunger, loneliness, ignorance, and despair wherever we find them. But true service does not come from a savior complex. It comes from humility. It is the understanding that by helping others, we are helping ourselves, because all are one. This realization dissolves the illusion of separateness and turns ordinary acts into sacred offerings. Perhaps the most profound aspect of compassion is that it transforms not only others, but also the one who practices it. When you act with compassion, even in small ways, offering a smile, a kind word, a patient ear, you purify your own mind. Hatred and fear lose their grip. Gratitude takes root. Compassion becomes a source of joy. The Buddha called this mudita, sympathetic joy, the happiness that arises from seeing others happy. In a compassionate heart, joy is no longer limited by personal gain. It expands with every good in the world. Even in suffering, compassion keeps the flame of joy alive because it connects you to something larger than yourself, the great fabric of life itself. There is a deep paradox in compassion. When you embrace the suffering of others, your own suffering diminishes. This is because compassion dissolves the ego, the false sense of I. The more you focus on helping others, the less room there is for self-pity. The heart grows wide enough to contain everything, your pain, their pain, and the vast stillness beyond pain. This is why the Bodhisattva, the ideal of Mahayana Buddhism, vows to remain in the world until all beings are free. Such beings find peace not by escaping the world's suffering, but by loving it fully. Compassion also reveals the deepest truth of interbeing, that no one truly suffers or rejoices alone. When you send compassion to others, you are sending it to yourself as well, because there is no boundary between giver and receiver. This understanding is beautifully expressed in the words of Thich Nhat Hanh. The tears I shed heal the river of sorrow that flows through all beings. Every act of compassion ripples through the universe, unseen but unfailing. The smallest kindness, a gentle word, a patient silence, a forgiving heart can echo across lifetimes. So when life feels hard, when the weight of the world seems unbearable, let compassion be your refuge. Begin with yourself. Place a hand on your heart and breathe softly. Say, may I be free from this suffering. May I learn from it. May I use it to understand others. Then expand that wish outward, to your loved ones, to strangers, to all beings everywhere. Imagine your compassion as light, radiating through the darkness, touching every heart that has ever ached. You will find that as you give compassion, you receive it. The more you offer, the more you are filled. In the end, compassion is the answer to every question, the medicine for every wound. It transforms the unbearable into the bearable, the ordinary into the sacred. It does not erase suffering, but it gives it meaning. It reminds you that even in pain, you are never alone. You are part of a vast, interconnected web of life, bound by love. This realization is the heart of awakening. The Buddha once said, If your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. Begin there. Let compassion flow inward and outward, endlessly like the breath. Each inhale nourishes you, each exhale nourishes the world. And as you live from that rhythm, you will discover what the Buddha discovered beneath the Bodhi tree, that love, in its purest form, is not something you create. It is what you are. When compassion becomes your way of being, fear loses its hold, anger dissolves, and even in the face of sorrow, peace remains unshaken. You will see that compassion is not just a response to suffering, it is the transformation of it. It turns wounds into wisdom, loneliness into connection, and life itself into a field of boundless grace. If these words have opened a space of peace and understanding in your heart, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and continue walking with us on this journey toward wisdom, compassion, and liberation.